Hi, welcome to Talking Philosophy. Today we're continuing the Sons of Socrates series. If you haven't seen the previous programs, it doesn't matter. They're not in any particular order. But today we will be discussing the Skeptics. Like all the other Sons of Socrates, the Skeptics are a group of philosophers whose influence created a school which was followed by the average person. Well, the skeptic probably not so much by the average person. It took an exceptional person to be a skeptic, but was an element of how people formed their lives, how they shaped their way of living. The skeptic, following the great Socratic story that we talked about when we did talk about Socrates, the skeptic believes that he is wisest who knows he knows nothing. You'll remember when Socrates' friends heard from the oracle at Delphi that no one is wiser than Socrates, Socrates concluded, well, if he was wisest of men, it was because he knew nothing. Well, the skeptic says, that's right, we know nothing. So everything we do either out of habit, out of custom, or we do in a very tentative, very bracketed way so that we never overcommit to anything. The skeptic is a person of prudence. The skeptic is a person who tries to use judgment constantly, does not accept life just as it's presented. Now, that's important because most of us do just accept life as it is presented. As a result, we often find ourselves coming to the wrong conclusions about things. The skeptic comes to no final conclusions ever. The skeptic always makes only tentative conclusions and always based on very careful and prudent analysis of the situation. Now, the greatest of the skeptics was Pyrrho. Well, at least he's the one who gave his name to the school, Pyrrhonic skepticism. Oh, for those of you who are curious, it's Pyrrho. Pyrrhonic skepticism is a true skepticism. It accepts absolutely no conclusive knowledge, no final decisions. Now, they tell the story that Pyrrho was so uncertain or so skeptical that he couldn't be trusted out, and they would send out children to keep an eye on him or slaves to protect him. I think this overstates the point. I don't think that's exactly what the skeptic is about. It's not that the skeptic is going to go, well, that looks like it's a hole in the road, but maybe it isn't. What the skeptic is going to say is that I can't trust my senses. I can't trust my thinking. I can't just walk through life blindly. Instead, I have to be mindful and aware of the world in which I live and not so quick to jump to conclusions and take any conclusions I come to as only tentative. I mean, this is the exact opposite of the way most people live. Most of us just go through life. We're not worrying about what it is. We accept what we see. We embrace what we hear. We have no real element of reflection. The skeptic reflects constantly. Not that they're going to arrive at a conclusion, but rather they reflect because they can't know the truth. They can't know anything. All they can do is develop opinions. All they can do is come to understand customs. This is a introspective life. This is a life that enables you to live with other people, but never in complete and total comfort. There's a little bit of the paranoid about the skeptic, I suppose, but why not? The life of a person in antiquity was a very risky situation. A certain amount of skepticism, a certain amount of distrust of the average, the normal, the straightforward. Instead, looking at the world, constantly reflecting, constantly examining, doesn't seem like such a bad way to live, however hard it may be to do. The story is told, Diogenes Laertius tells us the story, that when Pyrrho was on a ship in a storm, everyone else is acting frantic and concerned, whereas he is unperturbed. He is unperturbed because he cannot genuinely trust that his life is in danger. He does not trust the report of his senses. Instead, he remains imperturbable. Ataraxia, or ataraxic in the case of the adjective. The state of ataraxia, of imperturbability, is the goal for most of these thinkers, for most of these schools of philosophy. They don't seek happiness per se, if by happiness we mean joy and laughter and gaiety. Instead, what they're looking for is peace of mind, a state where you are unperturbed and unbothered by what happens in your world. The skeptic is going to be unperturbed because any danger that approaches can be doubted. We can be skeptical of it. Whatever our situation is, we can look at it and face it without any real concern because we can't really know it's a danger that's facing us. All we know is something is happening. We're here for it. We can't know anything certain until something has finished, and so why get upset? Again, it's a way of life. It's not just, oh, we can't know things. As a result of saying we can't know things, we behave imperturbably. We treat life openly and reflectively. The person who knows, who is certain, who has all the answers, this person is in constant upheaval in the mind of the skeptic. As we'll see, most of our more certain knowers are just as imperturbable in their outcome as the skeptic is. This is the goal, to be at one with the world, to feel no risk about the world, to feel no danger about the world, to face whatever comes implacably. The skeptic does that by just not accepting anything as completely real, as no danger as completely genuine. It seems an odd way to do things, but at the same time, at least for Pyrrho, it seems to have worked. I know ataraxia seems strange to us, but it was, and its partner, apatheia, being without passion, both of these were considered the desirable states of affairs throughout much of antiquity. So the skeptics saw their role in society as gadflies, like Socrates. All of the people surrounding them were filled with dogma, filled with conclusions. They were certain of how things ought to be, and the skeptic would instead do everything that was in their power to upset the status quo, to undermine it. Not in a sort of bloody-minded way, the way the cynic did, but rather just to point out over and over and over, you can't know that for sure. You know, that's the way they do it here, but over in the other part of the country, they do it this way. That constant reflection, that constant insistence that nothing is certain helps to keep our society alive and vital. At least that's what they thought. Again, as with some of the others, I'm not sure a whole world of skeptics would work. We'd wind up doing nothing because nobody knew anything. We'd be imperturbable enough about the disasters, but we wouldn't make much progress because, again, we can't know what progress is. You can't know where we're going. You can't know what will be helping us get there. All that, I'm not sure it makes a whole society. But again, the society of the ancients was a pluralistic society. It was a society where there wasn't expected to be one final answer. And the skeptic is right in step with that. The skeptic is saying, I have an answer. Now, you may have an answer. I don't trust your answer, but your answer is your answer. I'll listen to it. But you must listen to mine, because if you're going to be dogmatic, I'm going to have to point out where you're wrong, why your dogma doesn't work. Conversation, discussion. This too is part of skepticism. Now, of course, the dogmatists, the knowers, suggest that the skeptic is just as dogmatic as they are, that they know that they can't know anything. I think that's dishonest. I think the skeptic is trying to peel back our certainty. I think they were skeptical of skepticism, that it had to keep being examined. There is this idea always in everything. Now, mind you, we don't have anything actually written by Pyrrho. In fact, he discouraged the whole concept of learning and teaching, saying instead that each of us must go out and face the world on our own. But again, the dogmatist says, well, then Pyrrho's just telling us what we ought to do because this is what Pyrrho says we ought to do, and he's being just as dogmatic, just as sure of himself as we are. But I think what Pyrrho's trying to say is, I don't know. I don't know. I could be wrong even about my skepticism. But the only way to find out is to go out, be in the moment, test the world step at a time, day to day, second to second, facing it with the awareness that you may always be wrong. And I think that's the key to the difference between the skeptics and the dogmatists. The dogmatists look for the truth. The skeptic simply looks to avoid being any wronger, any more wrong than they have to be. Because they have to be. They don't know the truth. It may be, as I say, they can't know the truth. So let us at least face our ignorance honestly. All right, well, that's what I came to say today. Hope you enjoyed the program. Again, if you subscribe and you're on YouTube, they're supposed to keep you up to date. There is a little bell that you can click on that they're supposed to notify you. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them down below. I am interested in engaging with you here. I, at least in this far, am a skeptic. I don't have answers to these questions. I have encounters I've had with these various schools, and I'd rather talk about them with you and work our way through the ideas than to try to tell you what's the right way and the wrong way to do all this. So again, thank you for coming by. Thank you for talking philosophy. Come on back and we'll talk some more.